Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. Today's special guest is Alexis. Alexis, how are you?
I'm good. How are
That's
you?
awesome. I'm doing good, staying warm. Yeah. So, Alexis, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Um, my name is Alexis Donkin, and I am the Destructrix. I am a psychic and an intuitive life coach. And so I help spiritual women who are in the closet generally about their spirituality in some way, to transform at crossroads moments and also to develop and embrace their gifts.
Ooh, that's so cool. Can you tell me what that word mean, though? This truck?
Oh, the Destructrix.
Yeah.
Well, so I really struggled with a label for myself for a really long time. I didn't feel like anything really fit. I so I I use psychic because people understand what that means.
Yeah.
Um, there's oftentimes people use the word creatrix for someone who's creative,
Yeah.
and I don't really identify with that word because a lot of times what we need to do is destroy things in order to make space for new things. I deal with a lot of liminal spaces and with moments of profound change, which in spirituality, a lot of times the symbol for that is death,
Yeah.
right? Where we have to remove something, we have to destroy something, we have to break it down so that we can transform. Growth comes with pain a lot of times.
Mhm.
If you're building up your muscles, you're gonna have some recovery time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of it presented itself to me, and
Mhm.
that's what I call myself. So
That's so cool. Yeah, I've heard of the word matrix, and there's a movie of it, right? The title Matrix.
yeah, that would be like a different, like, so the ending of the word has to do with a feminine form, right?
Mhm.
So it's not necessarily related to the word matrix, but
Mhm.
instead of creator or destroyer,
Mhm.
you'd say creatrix or destructrix. So that's where that
Oh.
comes from.
What did you have to destroy to do what you're doing? What did
I
you
I
do?
actually, so I have some big Scorpio energy. I'm just gonna put that right
Mm.
out there.
All
And
right.
actually, we're recording this on my birthday.
Oh, happy
Yeah, it's my
birthday.
birthday. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
So I have multiple planets in Scorpio. I have some,
That's so
like I'm ruled
cool.
by Mars. Like, for those of you who are into astrology, you'll understand, like, there's a lot of intense
Yeah. Yeah,
intense
definitely.
rebirth action there.
Yeah.
So
Oh wow. I'm a Pisces fish.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. That's really cool. Wow. Um, so were you born with spiritual gifts or you just developed them as an adult?
Yeah, so I was born psychic as far as I can tell.
Mm.
And my parents are actually ordained ministers. And so it was kind of a wild ride. You know, because
Yeah.
that's not exactly, we don't really think about those two things working together,
Mhm.
but it's actually, being in the ministry was a family business in a lot of ways, because I have on both sides of my family, I have multiple people, and I think part of that is just because there wasn't space for people with these gifts except
Yeah.
in very specific places,
Mhm.
and clergy was one of them.
Mhm.
And because my parents both have like intuitive stuff going on, although they wouldn't necessarily call it
Yeah.
what I call it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um so I remember, like a lot of psychic children, at the age of 7, I had, an encounter with Jesus, because that's the only thing that I
Oh,
could have,
yeah.
that's the only person that I could have really
Mm,
at that time. I didn't have any
mhm.
other thing. And that's pretty normal for psychic children at the age of 7 to have like a moment where they will encounter like an ascended master or a teacher from their cultural understanding and tradition. So, like, if you were
Mm,
growing up in Korea, for example, you might encounter Buddha.
yeah,
That would be
yeah.
like a normal thing. Um, so yeah.
Mm, that's really cool. Yeah. That is quite the background because I don't know, my family they have a few different religions and I had to choose what was right. Now I was also born open, which was a nightmare. I can only imagine for you what that was like, how you survived. It was like suffocating, like to my soul. I don't know what your experience was. Would you say your parents now accept what you do?
They do. I wouldn't say that I flaunt it. I don't, I'm not like talking about specifically what I'm doing, but like,
Mhm,
I'll tell them like, oh, I have a reading that I'm doing for a client today or something like that. Or like,
mm,
we'll talk about like some things that I know, or some kind of experiences like in passing, not in
mm,
details.
yeah.
But I have had really powerful experiences where I kind of recruited them to help me.
Mm,
So, for example, there was a young woman who passed away unexpectedly.
yeah.
And this was kind of at the beginning of me owning my gifts, not
Mm,
having them, but
mm,
owning them.
yeah,
And she requested that I give a message to her mother, because her mother was, of course,
yeah.
grieving.
Mm,
And I just wasn't sure if I could give it directly. And
mm,
so my father knew her well, and I said, can you
mhm,
share this, vision that I had of her daughter
mhm.
and this message to her? And he was like, okay. And so he did. And it was a really positive thing. And then and as it happened, she was very open to that, and she was
Oh, wow.
deeply appreciative of
Mhm.
me. He said, I didn't get this. I'm just a messenger.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, that's awesome. How did she show up for you? Was it a shadow form or a thought?
Um, I have a pretty powerful clairvoyance, and I've always had pretty powerful clairvoyance. So I see things very clearly, and I also hear and feel things pretty
Mhm,
strongly as well. And
mhm.
so I saw her.
Oh,
She
wow.
was talking to me, and I saw her. I was actually, in that instance, I was laying down getting ready to take a nap, and she was just like, I need you to do this for me. I was like, okay.
Oh, wow. Did you see her like you're seeing me?
Sometimes I do. I mean,
Okay.
for different spirits, it kind of, it just depends on how,
Mhm.
spiritual beings want, what
Yeah.
they're comfortable with and what they're capable of. But typically I see things almost like a movie, like an immersive movie, like
Oh,
you're
okay.
going, and
Mm,
the full experience, the environment is different, everything. Spirit is so, it's so interesting to see how spirit uses different symbols in visions and communication to
mm.
show so much.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like, okay, well, now I'm in a garden. I'm in my room, I'm in my bedroom or wherever. I'm in the kitchen, but also like I'm on the beach and
Oh,
like
wow.
so I'm on, wherever, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Um
so cool. Yeah, I saw my one of my spirit guides in flesh, like a real person. I don't
mm,
know what she looks like, but hey, I saw her for the first time. I think it was last month or the month before.
mm.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. What was your encounter with Papa Jesus like with Jesus.
I mean, I think like it was very simple because like I said, I was 7. So, how are you gonna
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna ask crazy, intense questions. No, you're
Yeah,
just gonna be like, okay.
yeah.
And but the thing that I remember the most about it is
Mhm,
that it was very loving
mhm.
and very assuring and affirming. I felt like that was the biggest thing. Like it wasn't a conversation. It was just like, I'm loved and I feel a lot of love. And it was like I felt a big psychic hug, just like a big hug holding me. It was super awesome,
That's so
actually.
cool. Yeah, I had a vision. I saw Jesus' feet, and I
Mm,
couldn't look up because it was too bright. And that was one of the first visions that I had, after
yeah,
the dark night of the soul. I don't know, somewhere in the Bible it says to come at the feet of Jesus, lay your burdens. I don't remember which verse, but
yeah.
because yeah, for me, I never felt loved or worthy, especially of being loved by
Mm,
ascended masters like him. But yeah, it's a profound feeling.
it
And
is.
sometimes it's hard to articulate that
Yes.
with human emotions. Yeah, 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 it can be. So you said you're a Scorpio. Is that a scorpion? I'm
Yeah.
not too familiar with you know.
It- I am not an astrologer, so I'm not
Oh,
gonna
really?
that's but
Yeah.
I feel like I am definitely a Scorpio. It's just associated with like rebirth and kind of underworld,
Yeah.
power, shadow,
Yeah.
seduction, those kinds of things.
Well, I
It's
think
like
that
you better
describes
watch
what you do.
yourself, but
Yeah.
also but
Yeah.
also
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say also like truth and loyalty are really,
Mm.
really big things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Theme.
really cool. Yeah. So you work with women, to come out of the closet.
Yeah,
I've had to come out and it's painful to be in there. What
it
has
is.
been your experience working with clients who have finally came out and found freedom?
Oh, I mean, I will say that most of my clients are not quite there yet.
Ooh,
A
yeah.
lot of my clients, a lot of the people that I work with, they're in the process of accepting things and trying to figure it out and figuring out how comfortable they are diving into this stuff. Because as you know, it can be overwhelming and a
Oh
little
my
bit
gosh, it is.
scary
It is.
sometimes,
It is. Yeah.
I mean, just on the spirit side, not on the people side. I mean, on the
Yeah.
incarnated people side, that's a
Mhm.
different level of scary, right?
Yeah.
Because these things are very stigmatized and it can, I mean, if you look at like pop culture, for example, you see psychics portrayed in movies and
Yeah.
shows and stories, and always, there's something like they have to hide, or it's not
Mm.
safe, or they get committed, or something like that. And you're just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like maybe somebody's gonna try and put me on medication or something and think that I'm hallucinating. And it's like, well, I mean, no.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
reality is, and I tell my clients this a lot, um, it's normal. This is actually normal. Everybody has the wiring to do this. It's just where you are in the journey. Some of us came out and we were already developed, and some of us are starting from, step one,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And we wouldn't have religion at all if we didn't have people with these gifts. We wouldn't have spiritual teachers if we didn't have people with these gifts.
Mm.
Even people who don't, quote unquote, don't believe this stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody dies in their family and they have a dream that they're visited, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
has these stories. Everybody
Yeah.
has these stories.
Mhm.
They have ghost stories, or they have stories of their grandma visiting, or they happen to just know something. And it's like, well, how can you deny that this is a normal human thing when you're experiencing this and you have experienced this and everybody has experienced this? I mean, really.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. And most people, regardless of religion, sometimes they believe in hell or heaven. Where did that belief came from? Is it from their childhood or generation? I'm always puzzled and asking those questions. Where and why do people believe that if they don't believe in, what the stuff that we do, like the
Yeah, well,
psychic stuff?
that thing is like, I feel like that has to do with people think that some people need to be punished and some people need to be rewarded.
Mm.
And that's a good way to control people, honestly. but I actually think that whether you're in heaven or hell, you're there right now.
Oh, we are. We're
You know,
doing a pretty
like
job. Yeah.
this is a state of being, and how you choose to live your life, how you choose to be, that dictates what you're experiencing. So if you're making choices that turn you into a monster, then you're a monster.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we're already creating our own heaven and hells here on earth without
Absolutely.
realizing it. I don't know if you've heard of law of attraction and the power of the mind and what we can create and cause. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you tell me some of the myths that you've heard of within the line of work that you do?
Myths. Which, where do you want to start? I mean,
You can start anywhere.
I mean, like, so a myth is like a story that gives us meaning, right? If we're talking about like the depth psychology understanding of that. So when we talk about myth, we could talk about, like, a lot of people think of, oh, this is a false story. That's how a lot of people use it. Or they're thinking about like mythology with like gods and goddesses and
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastical creatures. But like, if we're talking about religion and spirituality and we're talking about myth, we're talking about stories that give us meaning, like the Garden of Eden is a myth, right? So I don't know if I'm not sure what myths I've found in New Age or like woo circle. I it's hard for me because I have studied religion pretty in depth. I wrote a world religion curriculum and an interfaith devotional. So this is like something that I know a lot about and I teach other people about. So when I think about myths and stories that we tell, what kinds of stories do we tell in these spaces that I feel are like the Wild West? Like, I feel like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, the spiritual spaces online and in real life, people just make stuff up.
Oh, they do.
And it's like, and I'm like, I don't know why no, I do know. I know why they're doing it. Because they want to feel special, And it's like, you don't actually have to make something up to feel special. You're already special. Like, there's only one of you in this world, and you were divinely created to do something that only you can do, to be yourself. So I mean, I think that's one of the kind of stories that people tell themselves, is that they have to have this secret special knowledge. But that's just not true. We we don't have to have any secret special knowledge. There is none. There's nothing. You don't have to go out and find something. You don't have to have some like wild and crazy guru type person. It's not necessary. What you need to do really is to be yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And most of us look for stuff that is already inside of us on the outside world, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if it's from how we were raised or just fear or just needing validations to say, hey, what you're doing is good, when really we can say that to ourselves. We don't need people to say it to us.
Yeah. Well, I
Mhm.
think a lot of people just don't feel like they're enough.
Mm,
And so I think actually this is a myth in spiritual spaces, is that you have to keep seeking. You have to keep searching.
yeah.
And it's not true. It's like what you're just saying is this, it's inside of you. You have access to this. I mean,
Mhm.
the reason why you go out and find someone like me is to help you
Yeah.
get there. You
Yeah.
know, you have to pull off the extra stuff and just access this and have the assurance and the self knowledge that actually it's right here, and you don't
Mhm.
have to go out and search. You don't have to have,
Mhm.
some cult personality or something.
Yeah, yeah. How do you help your clients find their soul purpose and their callings?
So I I really think that a person's purpose is to be themselves.
Mhm.
Fundamentally, I think that that's why we're here.
Mhm.
A lot of people will overcomplicate it and say like, oh, you have to do this, or you have to do that. It has to, you have to go through some like big crazy process to figure it out.
Yeah.
And while you might have to go through the process, it's not the way that a lot of people think. So what I try and do is I try and help people figure out, okay, who are you? What do you value? What do you want? What
Mhm.
do you believe?
Mhm.
And how do you want to be in this life? I mean, a lot of times figuring that out is actually kind of hard, because we've had all these different people and forces telling us who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to act,
Mhm.
our journey is supposed to look like, we're supposed to have a house and 2.5 kids and a dog and a picket
Yeah.
fence, which is just not that's
Yeah.
not happening for most of us for a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of reasons.
Yeah.
And to get to a point where you can just accept and embrace the fact that no,
Mhm.
that's not going to happen, and that's not even necessarily what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and that it's okay, and just kind of embracing and enjoying the journey of being you in this life,
Mhm.
because the universe needs you to be
Mhm.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very reassuring.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just it kind of it lets the pressure off.
Mhm.
That you can just relax and
Mhm.
not worry too much about it. Your
Yeah.
flaws are part of the design.
Mm.
They're not actually flaws. You know what I mean? Like yeah, maybe they are, but they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're there. It's a part of it. And as long as you're pursuing things in a life-giving way,
Mhm.
for the highest good, that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd say that sometimes we view the world and our situations based on the ego's perspective,
Mm,
because the human mind, it thinks so different than the soul. I don't understand all the time how the soul thinks and how it can be so open, full of life and brightness and forgiveness, whereas
mm.
the ego is out to get people and to criticize. And it's a beautiful split, and we need both. It's just understanding how to balance both of them.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, I think, when we're talking about, um, a lot of times I'm help my clients recognize their intuition, their intuitive nudges, and acknowledge them, because that's one of the trickier things to do, is kind of let the mind kind of take a back seat for a minute
Hmm.
and just, embrace, oh, this is just like a little warning here, or this is this is something that is encouraging me to do this thing. It doesn't make logical sense.
Hmm.
um but I just need to do it. And then allowing the mind to come in and kind of work on some of the details sometimes
Mm,
is where it
mhm.
I think you have to kind of strike that balance. And it is tricky at first, but once you get it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Can you tell me more of your book? Is it books or book?
Oh, I actually have a lot of books, but
Okay.
the one I was mentioning before, it's 6 Degrees of Separation, curriculum on world religion, and then the interfaith devotional that goes along with it is 42 Days Through Faith. Um,
Okay.
and that's I would say it's kind of my activism
Mhm.
project. Like
Okay.
definitely has spiritual stuff to it,
Mm,
but it's sort of in a different direction than what I do
mhm,
with clients. It's more of what I do, like if I go into organizations and do workshops and things, I'll do workshops on that topic.
mhm.
And that's basically to help people recognize the similarities despite the differences.
Oh,
Um, Religion influences everything, even if we
yeah.
don't identify as religious. It influences the languages that we use, it influences how we speak with one another, it influences our politics, it influences our culture and our morals and our philosophy. And a lot of people do not know very much about it. It's like, and I'm not talking about Christianity even, which frankly a lot of people don't know about that. They think they do, but they don't.
Yeah.
And that goes for many people even who are in churches.
Mm.
um but I'm talking about other religions too. There's the curriculum focuses on the 6 most influential or popular world religions as a starting place, right? Because there's a bunch, but I had to narrow it down because otherwise it would get unwieldy.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so it's very interesting. Like every time I lead a workshop, people are like, I didn't realize how much I didn't know. And
Wow.
it's like, yeah. And then thinking about, this is a myth. um a lot of people think that all religions have love at the center, and that's just not true.
Yeah, yeah, I
Not
agree.
true. And
Yeah.
even if we're talking about spiritual people, having that at the center is not necessarily true.
Mhm,
But um but it's a really beautiful thing to see people when they're working through this curriculum in a class, or if they're doing the interfaith devotional, and coming with an open heart and an open mind, and being willing to see, like, okay, yeah, we don't agree on this stuff, but the big stuff we actually do agree on, and maybe we can work together to figure something out and make the world a better place.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, I agree, yeah. Do you also write music or produce music?
Oh, this is so my dad's first love is music. And
Oh,
so when I was a teenager, we wrote and produced a couple of music albums, and for a long time we would perform out together. It's a hobby, but it's something that I
okay.
learned a lot about.
Yeah.
um and so being able to help my clients with things around that is something that I can't do.
Oh, okay, okay, that's cool though. It's good to have those experiences. I
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, do you do arts?
Yeah, I actually went to art school for a couple of years and have done studied visual arts for a while, and have done like solo exhibitions and things. That's another area of
Oh, okay.
it's I don't do it professionally, but it's something that I have a deep knowledge about, and
Mm.
again can help my clients. And of course, I use it with my graphics work for my
Yeah,
business.
yeah, that's so cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I do arts not professionally, and I think all of us are artistic in some way.
And and I think we should be. I
Mm.
think it's good for the soul to do some kind of creative work. I tell clients, if you can't sit still and meditate, You could sit and get an adult coloring book or do a craft or something, sit down and do that, and it can be a really good option
Yeah.
to calm the mind and really kind of sink in.
Yeah, I agree. How would you define a psychic? Because there's so many different, is there different types of psychics, or I don't know.
Oh, girl. Like, let's open the box.
All right.
So, so, so I would say that a psychic is a person that has extrasensory perception of some kind. I would say that there's a difference between psychic abilities and psychic skills. Abilities, I would say, are the senses that we're talking about. And I would say there are people who would disagree with me, but I think that they're being a little inventive. I would say that there are 6 clairs total, the most common ones being the ones that we would typically talk about, which is clairvoyance, clear seeing, clairsentience, clear feeling, clear cognizance, clear knowing, and clear audience. Those are the ones that most people deal with. You know, if we're talking about, we could talk about clairsalience or clair augustins, but they're much less, clear smelling, tasting. People don't use
They're
those.
not common. Yeah.
No. And they don't give you as much information, I feel. So those are the abilities. But as far as like what you're doing with your skills and how those show up, that's where we're talking about aura reading, which is a type of clairvoyance. We talk about mediumship, which could involve clairvoyance or actually any of the above.
Yeah.
We talk about Reiki, which uses when we talk about energy, any kind of energy work, we're talking about clairsentience a lot of times, because it will involve moving things. Although sometimes you could use some other types of things. Psychometry, which is when you're touching an object and getting information from that would be clairsentience.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that our skills develop, and yes, you could go to like a psychic school. Those do exist, and they kind of will give you specific practices and exercises, and you kind of come through a little bit of a cookie cutter. Which is fine. That's fine. Like, I'm not, it's fine for people. I think, however, there's something about that wild psychic ability when it's left to its own devices. Form follows function. So I would say you're meant to develop those abilities in a certain way that reflects who you are. So like, I have a friend who, she can't do the things that I do, but she is really, she communicates with plants. She communicates, that's her thing. She doesn't do anything with land spirits. She has no interest with animals, but when it comes to plants, she has this deep relationship with them. An animal communicator, they don't care about plants. Conversation with animals, and so it uses a lot of those abilities. Both of these things use those abilities, but they take on different shapes, and that's totally normal and I would say correct. So one of the things that I talk a lot about is that if you're looking for a psychic reader or a mentor, you want to find out what kind of form their stuff takes, because there's as many different psychics as there are people, so Is it going to be a match for you? You're not going to know until you have the conversation, or read some testimonials or look at their website, find out, is this actually going to be what I'm looking for and what I want? Or is this really not,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. I have a mentor, but she clarifies things. She doesn't specifically do the work for me. I
Yeah.
do it.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, during Halloween, it was so bad. All my clairs were on
Yeah.
fire. It
Yeah.
was just terrible. I haven't felt that way in a long time. And yeah, I know I'm not alone. How was Halloween for you?
Well, I mean, so one of my guides is the Morrigan.
Mhm.
Um, and she's a Celtic goddess. And Halloween is actually like a modern version of her holiday, which is Samhain.
Oh,
Um, and so it doesn't surprise me that you would have a rough Halloween, because that is it's a quarter day. So it's in between like the equinox and the solstice.
yeah.
And that is a liminal time. That's a time where the veil is a little bit thinner. So spirit and the material is interacting a lot more
Mhm.
um, around those kinds of days. Um, I I love it. I love the energy, because that's like,
Mhm.
I'm basically a Samhain baby, and like I said, the Morrigan is my girl, and we're like,
Yeah.
I um but I I also have really strong boundaries, which it took me time to develop and figure out how that was going to work, which is another thing that I really strongly advise my clients with when they're coming to me. That's probably the biggest issue that they have, is they're like, spirit's coming at me, it's too much information, I'm exhausted, I can't handle this, I want to drink a cup of coffee with my friend and not have something talking in my ear.
Mhm.
I don't want to laugh at a random time and have it not make sense. And I'm like, I feel you. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, yeah.
Let's set some rules and tell
Mhm.
spirit it's going to be, and then it's fine. But
Mhm.
it took me a long time to kind of like figure it out and be like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we're not going to be doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, it just felt like my whole entire house was full of dead people, like it
Oh
was terrible. I was shit scared. It's like I did some terrible drugs that hyped me up. My brain, everything was foggy,
no.
and I couldn't close my eyes properly. When I do, I see flashes, and it
Yeah.
was hyper speed.
Oh
It was a million miles an hour in my thoughts. And but yeah, the next I did smudge that night. I smudge every day, right? And the
yeah.
next day I smudge and I opened the window and I said, get the F out. I'm not nice to them, especially if they're not welcome. I said,
No.
leave. This is my space. I will
Yeah.
not live in fear. I don't understand what you're saying, because I don't. I
Yeah.
can't. I can't. Yes, I have all the clairs, but they're messed up right now. I'm in training. I don't. And I asked them to leave. And I slept just fine that night. The
That is perfect. That's perfect.
next Yeah, yeah, yeah. um, what do you want my guests to get from this episode?
Oh, I think probably the biggest thing, the most important thing is uh to just be yourself.
Yeah.
Um to really be yourself. And that includes wherever you are on the spiritual journey, you
Mhm,
know.
mhm,
The sooner that you can embrace where you are and who you are, the easier everything gets.
yeah.
The more clarity that you have, the stronger sense of purpose, the less you care what people think about you. It's just very liberating and beautiful. And so I hope that if you're listening to this, that you take that away, and that this
Mhm,
inspires you to pursue you.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Where can my listeners find you and support your work?
Yes. You can find me at alexisdonkin.com. That's the easiest. You can get all of the things. I'm also on Instagram at alexis.donkin and TikTok at alexis.donkin. And if you are curious about working with me, like the best foot in the door is Ask a Psychic. And that's 20 minutes. It's 30
Mhm.
bucks. It's really cheap. And we can talk about one question, and that's good for you. When you leave that conversation, you
Mhm.
will have assurances, your next right step, and or a plan of action. And it feels really good. So I would love for you to reach out to me and to have a chat. And it will feel pretty much like this, but just
Yeah,
personal for you.
that's awesome. Yeah. Last question for you as we wrap up. What
Mm.
is the meaning of life for you?
Be you,
Yeah.
to experience how you are in this life, right? I mean, I think we have additional opportunities, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
um but but you only get to be this once,
Mhm.
and so enjoy it, dip your toes in the sand, play the music, eat the cake, have the nice sex with the beautiful lover, go to brunch with your friends, try things,
Yeah.
and figure out what you like and what lights your soul on fire, and do that
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Wow. I love this conversation. Time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Alexis, thank you for your time. Thank you for being you, for sharing your gifts with me, my audience, and the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.